Even Tesla, I think Tesla today came out with that they applied for in California to get their taxi license because, again, Elon's trying to push forward the kind of Tesla taxi service. Again, why is Tesla down to 2.5% today? Sentiment, not news. What is going on, traders? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Kyle Williams, and today's video we are going to talk about just a little market update and specifically how to kind of spot trend shifts, sentiment shifts, and we're going to use exactly what we're going through literally in today's market as an example. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. SPY and like QQQ, right? The total, the biggest, market indexes that is out there, we're having a little pullback, right? QQQ is down, what, roughly 8%. SPY is down a little bit less at around, is that like 5%? You look at these pullbacks and you think, oh, that's not that bad, right? There's been many pullbacks in the SPY in the last even year, and we're still on an uptrend. Same thing with QQQ, even a bigger one when the Japan carry trade happened in August, and we're still back up here, or at least at the highs previously. You would think it's very minimal and the market's not freaking out. However, from what I'm seeing, from the sentiment I'm reading on, the market is freaking out. And it's very interesting from the chart to the emotions, how they're different. And I'll tell you why the market is maybe freaking out or more fearful than it actually is, and why ultimately that is what matters and not what maybe is technically happening, right?
Ever dreamed of trading like one of the Clovers? Well, it all starts with choosing the right broker. Clover Trading and Cobra have teamed up to supercharge your trading experience. By clicking below, you'll unlock the power of Cobra Prime. We're talking top-tier trading tools, saving you hundreds of dollars. Get ahead with real-time scanners, cutting-edge news, 30 days of commission-free trading, 30 days of free DAS software, 60 days free of Ask Edgar, and so much more. Imagine all that, plus superior short inventory, personalized support, and interest on your idle funds. But it doesn't stop there. Cobra offers competitive pricing on locates and commissions that fit your trading style, with the ability to trade stocks, futures, options, and other products. If you're under the pattern day trading rule, Cobra has a unique solution for you. Venom, a platform designed for traders with smaller accounts to go long or short on small and mid-cap stocks. Ready to elevate your trading game and save big? Click the link below to access exclusive deals only available through Clover Trading and Cobra.
And so if you've noticed, some of the biggest assets to go up since the election have kind of given back all of their gains, right? The first biggest one I think people would recognize is Tesla. The election happened, Trump became president, and Tesla broke out of this like 270, 280 range and went on this massive run all the way to 480. I did not take part in this run at all. I wish I kind of did. But now it's coming back and it's kind of having a form of capitulation. Had a small panic a couple weeks ago, bounced, but that wasn't enough. And now we're down, another 20 or 30% and almost down now 50% from the highs, if not approaching it. So that's number one. Another one, which is not, as legit of a, I guess, fundamentally legit of a ticker, is DXYZ. DXYZ also ran similar because Tesla ran. DXYZ, for those who don't know, owns a bit of SpaceX. Obviously, SpaceX is tied to somewhat of Tesla because of Elon. This also went on a huge run and then stayed up much longer than it ever should have. For those don't know the fundamental story behind this thing, is that it's fundamentally worth $5. The net asset value of all the companies this ticker holds is worth $5. Yet it's trading at an 8x premium. So even this one has not given back the gains from the election. You look at something like Bitcoin. If you do IBITS, which is BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, hit a high of like 61, almost 62, and is pulled back to about 48. So that's about what, a almost 30% pullback, 25% pullback, okay? And again, another one that broke out because of the election is pulling back. Now, those are the main ones. You look at like DJT, that's, Donald Trump's stock. That has obviously given back the gains. Now, from the election, it was already up super high, but it started anticipating that election result, back here when it was in October around the teens. It hasn't really gone that far back down yet, but it has, clearly given off plenty, it's what? Well over 50% off its highs at this point. So stuff like that, the frothiness or the air that was pushing up so many of these assets since November is kind of coming out. And so all these assets that are down much lower, the overall indexes are not so as much. But then we look at like other factors, like let's look at some tickers that weren't necessarily tied to the election, but just were due for a pullback. If we look at PLTR, huge run, absolutely massive. And technically you could argue this did start going up a ton right when the election started. But it got even more overdone. I mean, we went from 40 bucks and change to 120. a triple in what, 3 months, 4 months max? It's a little too much too soon. And so naturally we were due for a pull. We've now gone from like 125 down to 85, quite the pullback. There's also HIMS, HIMS, similar idea. Didn't necessarily go up straight away with the election, but at some point did get a nice strong move from 25 all the way up to 70. So, or almost 75. So almost another triple as well here. And again, at some point, we're just due for the air to come out of it. Nothing can go straight up, nothing can go straight down. And so we pull back from the 70s and now into the 40s, okay? Now, this is healthy because the ones that are getting overdone the most are pulling back the most. And the ones that aren't, like SPY or QQQ, are having a very much smaller pullback in comparison, right? However, that sentiment though, that shift in change from something that's super frothy to now pulling back, ruins the fun for people, ruins the sense of confidence in the market in general. So because you have something like Nvidia, who posted earnings yesterday, technically beat expectations, right? They beat what analysts expected them to have in earnings, yet they're down 7.5% today, right? Why is that? You could argue the same thing for Bitcoin. News came out a couple days ago that Citadel is going to get into the crypto space and start providing liquidity the same way they provide liquidity for stocks. Sounds pretty, positive news for me. Maybe not necessarily bullish for the price, but that came out, no one cares. Doesn't matter. The stock's going down. And so that's one of the things where sentiment and how people are emotionally feeling is way more important than maybe the fundamentals in the short term. Even Tesla. I think Tesla today came out with that they applied for in California to get their taxi license because, again, Elon's trying to push forward the kind of Tesla taxi service. Again, why is Tesla down to 2.5% today? Sentiment, not news. Now, the fundamental news or the good headlines, I think over the long run, end up playing out and end up being a reason for stocks to go up. But in the short run, people only care about their money. People only care about their emotions. And so when we are in what seems to be a scary-esque market, or just, again, the frothiness going out or leaving, the balloon, the air kind of coming out of the balloon, so to speak, until that shifts again, there's no kind of amount of news that could really change this. Now, obviously there is news that's big enough. Like if Tesla posted insanely good earnings, then yeah, it could go up. But, something like Nvidia did and it went down. So it's not a perfect science, but just understand that when sentiment is kind of the lead driver in certain pullbacks, sometimes that's really all that matters in the short term, okay? Now, another factor to consider, specifically with the SPY and the QQQ, just from an overall economy standpoint, is a lot of the headlines are also around tariffs, right? Trump is increasing and putting some tariffs on some other countries, and the market doesn't like uncertainty. People don't know how to necessarily digest those tariffs. And again, I'm certainly not an expert either, so I'm not going to hear and try to digest them. But naturally, when it's uncertain, that also creates this kind of pullback. But one thing I will say, though, tariffs that have been around for a long time, maybe not as long or as a grand of a scale that Trump is putting in place, but there were tariffs during the Biden administration, right? And I'm not saying that to get political. I'm just saying that tariffs have been around, right? And if you just look at, I don't know, let's call it not even the last 4 to 8 years, let's just look at the last 20 years. The long-term trend is pretty clear. Now, obviously, short-term, there's turbulence, which is why we're having the pullback we're having. But again, once that stops and then the market gravitates toward another kind of sentiment, that is what ultimately drives price in the short term, along with the underlying kind of fundamental big headlines for the long term. That being said, let me know if you kind of like this kind of different kind of video. We're kind of just analyzing the market, what's going on in this particular week. No necessarily trades I'm watching off it besides Tesla. I do think eventually there is a bounce to be had here, very similar to last week's or 2 weeks ago where it kind of pulled back too much and then there's a bounce. Almost reminds me kind of similar of back in 2022 when this thing pulled on its way to 100. Quite a big panic here and eventually offered a very, very good bounce. No idea how good this bounce will be, but I do think a bounce will come at some point. But again, it's when that sentiment shifts. So anyways, guys, like and subscribe. Let me know if you like these kind of market updates, and I'll catch you guys hopefully in the next one. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.